Good afternoon, guys. This is Paul Smith with 12 Rivers Realty. Currently working on my ACL slash Barry White voice from all the dust out at ACL. But today is October 15th. This is our 12 at 12. 2 weeks into Q4, so a lot of fun things happening. A lot of interesting things happening. We've got a government shutdown happening right now. And kind of what does that mean? What does that mean for interest rates? What does that mean for business? Guys, you know, with the current government shutdown, man, my heart really kind of goes out to the folks out there that are, working jobs that need those funds to be able to, um, to be able to pay rent, to be able to have food. It's crazy to think that things that are happening right now at a very high government level are affecting people that are just trying to work, just trying to get by, just trying to do whatever it is that they do. Think about it. Like a lot of times the reason why you work for the government is because it's supposed to be a steady paying job. You typically know they're not going to go out of business. Um, there's some sort of a pension after 20 years. There's good insurance. Shout out Paul Roseberry in the house. Paul, thanks for jumping in here, man. Those that don't know, Paul's my cousin. We grew up together in New Hampshire and things were good. Clarissa, thanks for jumping in here. Guys, we're talking about government shutdown and what that means for business and kind of the different things that affects. Man, I know for sure. I have a client that just wrote a contract. He works as a fairly high level government position. He'd be using a VA loan, and we had to write in his contract that it extends out if the government isn't open for him to be able to close. Man, shout out, we got Wolf of Sixth Street in the house. Man, thanks for jumping in here. Olga, thanks for jumping in here as well. This is week 2 of that shutdown, right? And so this is probably the first week in which that people are not going to receive paychecks, right? What does that mean, dude? That means that you're going to have people that aren't able to pay rent coming up on the first. You've got people that may not be able to provide food for their families. A lot of people, unfortunately, they don't have a lot of savings and they're living check to check. And this is something that is it's going to start affecting everybody at the end of the day. Um, but man, it's a scary thing. Hasn't really trickled into real estate yet. I will say, maybe one of the good things is that we don't have data to adjust rates, right? So after the rate drop that happened, um, you know, mortgage rates dropped and then the 10-year Treasury crept up, especially after Powell said that they thought that, the next rate cut this year was about 50-50. I think people were thinking that was going to be a little bit more guaranteed. But with that rate cut being 50-50, that meant that interest rates actually popped back up. So everybody that started to start the process of going through the buying process, they were almost too late to capitalize on that rate drop. And that, dude, by the way, I think that's what's important if you're looking to buy a home or if you're looking to sell a home, is to be able to capture that snapshot of a week or 2 weeks when rates drop. And it's tough to do that if you just start the process at that time. Not to say that it's not doable. It certainly is doable with the right team. However, at the same time, you want to be prepared and you want to be ready to go. And those that weren't because they heard rates were dropping, they're like, oh, I'm going to come in and buy a house. They might have been a little too late and they're actually getting the same rate as they would have prior to the rate drop. Again, the mortgage rates are tied to the 10-year Treasury. They're not tied to the Fed rate. The Fed rate is what banks borrow at, right? That's what we borrow from local banks. Um, More so on the mortgage rates are tied to the 10-year Treasury, and a lot of that stuff is built in at that point. Shout out to Alyssa Wynn in the house. Alyssa, thanks for jumping in here. 2024 newcomer of the year, Alyssa Wynn. Thanks for jumping in here. Man, what else are we going to talk about today? We're going to really try to key this more towards entrepreneurship today and maybe less about real estate and talk about more about the business acumen and the things that I've seen talking to different business owners, regardless of what profession you're in, things that cross over into all different types of businesses, everything from sales to really trying to create a community to a white glove type of a service. And those that don't know, I am a partner in Toshicon, which is a 6-seat omakase sushi experience. And I say experience because it really has to be an experience to get somebody to want to pay $300 to $400 a person, right? And otherwise, you could just have a wonderful experience at Uchi for $150 to $200 a person, maybe even a little bit less. But the thing is, when you get to that level of an omakase, or that level of a restaurant experience, or that level of a white glove experience, everything has to have a story. Everything has to have a meaning. Think about when you sign up a new client. Do you send them a handwritten note? If you don't, I think it's something you should consider. At any point in time, if you have some sort of a celebration of anything, even if they followed you on LinkedIn, send them a handwritten note. If they agreed to take a lunch meeting with you, send them a handwritten note. Going back to the basics and the touches that you should have. Robert Martinez in the house, man. Robert is somebody I used to work with at Treasure Island back in the day, and now he happens to be a badass professional driver, and so he helps us whenever we need to go anywhere. So those that are looking for a driver, hit up my boy Robert. Great guy. Um, and man, Robert's one of those guys, white glove experience. You get in his car and he's like, "Hey, would you guys like a drink? I have vodka. I have tequila." Probably shouldn't be saying this. But he's like offering things that make your experience better. What are things within your business, if you were to take a step back, that you can offer that make your client experience better in some way, shape, or form? It can be something that's as thoughtful as thinking about what they do in business and then connecting them to somebody else that they need to meet within your sphere, right? Who's somebody? Think about two people right now that need to meet each other, and then think about how great it would be if you connected them and somehow they made money out of it. Now, what that does is well, there's some level of reciprocity will come from that. Now, of course, guys, you have to make sure that you're not doing it for that, but we're doing it so that way there a rising tide can rise all ships. Who are people out there that should know each other within your sphere, within your community? Start to connect those people. I think being a connector is kind of a played out term, honestly, right? People that say they're connectors, whatever. I think more so, I think it's more important to genuinely try to create some level of community within your sphere or within your family, right? And so as you're kind of going through your day and you're thinking about your 10 closest friends, who are those that don't know each other that should know each other? And then set up a dinner, set up a lunch, set up a coffee with them. And then, really kind of take a step back and be like, man, I'm stoked that you guys are meeting each other because you're both dynamic people. And I know that you guys are going to connect in some way, shape, or form. What is amazing about that type of an experience is that if you model that out years later and all of a sudden they become really good friends, guess what? That's great. You did a good job, right? Life is about connecting people, and life is about building community. And really, that's also what business is about. So as we think about entrepreneurship and we think about that kind of white glove experience, what is something I challenge you, and I hope that you message me on this. What is one thing that you can do today or tomorrow that will help your business and help grow your business? And that could be something like I said, it could be handwritten notes. It can just be picking up the phone, things like that. Guys, again, this is Paul Smith with the 12 at 12. Um, Always an element of AMA on this, so you can ask me anything. Let's see. Clarissa says, what are some ways that real estate has connected you to different people that didn't initially begin in real estate? Well, I mean, look, if you think about real estate as a vehicle, it's connected me to a lot of people. I think in 2012, I started working with different artists to help them find places to stay during South by Southwest. And then that blossomed into its own community, right? Picking people up from the air. And again, white glove experience, picking people up from the airport, making sure that you get them checked in, making sure that you're getting them everything that they need along the way for their stay, and offering a full concierge level service. I think people really appreciate that, and people really appreciate being taken care of. How can you do that in your world? Right. I would say, though, you know, some ways that real estate has connected you to different people that dish. I mean, look, all these people, like just about every relationship that I have either came from the bar industry or from real estate. And that's via real estate has really kind of helped me become the, quote unquote plug for Austin in a lot of ways. And that's why I get hit up by people when they come in town because they want to know what to do. They want to know where to hang out. They want to know where to eat. And I really try to pride myself on being that person that can make just about anything happen for them. That is something that you guys could take and put that within your own sphere and within your own network. Let's see here, by the way. Clarissa sent me over a bunch of stuff that we need to talk about today. Let's say, so KXAN, what is Proposition Q? Austin's tax rate election explained. I'll be honest, I have no clue what Proposition 2 is. Let's read about it real quickly. After City Council signed off a fiscal year 2025-2026 budget and tax rate, you'll head to the ballot box to give a thumbs up or down. Okay, so those that don't know this, the state of Texas has basically capped the municipalities, like City of Austin, can only raise their tax rates 3% a year. Now, if it goes over 3%, everyone has to vote on that. And it's safe to say that budgets go up more than 3%, right? CP shit. If at one point inflation was at 9%. So it's tough to go up 3% a year when the cost is going up 9%. So what does that mean? If you're capped at 3% growth and the cost of expenses is 9%, that means that you're a 6% deficiency from year over year. I definitely think that I probably have more exposure than most out there when it comes to property taxes. And I definitely don't want to pay more. However, I understand that we need to pay something so that way our city can do what it needs to do. At the end of the day, schools are very important. Right now, there's a big thing coming out where City of Austin is having to basically look at cutting 12 schools. That's a real scary thing, specifically if your home is within that school district or that with where that school is, I would probably consider selling if it were me. Um, because that means that now your child is going to potentially end up in a school that's going to have more kids in it. And education is something that's very important that a lot of families look at when it comes to real estate. Let's see here. Oh, next thing on the list is plenty of new projects are on drawing board, but there's no rush to build them. That is absolutely right. If you think about it, the city of Austin takes about 18 months to 24 months to get a project approved, to have it go all the way from planning process to site plan to permits to ready to build. Well, at that point there, I think a lot of people are kind of hitting pause. Wow, why are they hitting pause? Controlling the land is the most important thing when it comes to development, and then being able to get it entitled. All of a sudden, once you have it entitled, that land becomes worth significantly more. There's a business model just in getting dirt entitled. Essentially, if it's a raw piece of land that you can now build more, that means that that land value goes up. And that would be a time in which where you could offload that property. Or in this case, they're holding it because a lot of people are kind of worried and they're trying to see what's going to happen. What's going to happen on the horizon when it comes to real estate. And it's easier to just hold the dirt because your cost is significantly lower at that point and you're shovel ready. So at that point, what they will do is they'll go ahead and roll that into a construction loan. And we think that interest rates, specifically the Fed rate, is going to be less, let's say, between 0 to 6 months from now, than it will be within that time frame, right? So you don't want to go ahead and put it in a construction note if you're going to get a half point rate cut in that time frame, because if you're talking about $100 to $200 million deal, that half point might be the difference between your deal getting financed or not, or that might be the difference between an investor coming in and investing in that deal or not. So those are things that are really important when you think of that. So it absolutely makes sense that deals are sidelined, specifically multifamily deals, because right now everybody's trying to see, rental rates are down. Rental rates are down considerably from year over year. They're down about 15% from 2024 to 2025. It's because we added a significant amount of apartments. In 2024, we added 60,000 apartments. We absorbed 40. Now that's starting to shift a little bit. So our absorption is up, which means that eventually rental rates are going to go up. That is going to help also finance these deals because a lot of these are sold on what's called a cap rate. And a cap rate is essentially your gross income minus your expenses is your net profit, and your net profit divided by the sales price. That is a very basic level of cap rate. And so if a property goes from a 6 cap to an 8 cap because rental rates have gone up, that means that the home or that investment property is potentially going to sell more because of that. Man, we got Selma in the house. Happy birthday, Selma. She is a beacon of light at 12 Rivers and a lot of fun. And so shout out to Selma. Let's everybody wish her a happy birthday. Let's see what else we got going on here. What else we're going to talk about? What do developers think of building under Austin's home ordinance? For those that don't know, the home ordinance is something that was put in place February of 2024 that allows builders to put 3 homes on one lot. It allows them to, it basically cuts back the parking requirements. It did some things as far as allowing a third story to be able to go up as high as you want, assuming you're within the building envelope, versus it being what was called an attic exemption, where you had like the side starting at like 5, 6, and then go up to 7 and then up. Now you can have walls that go straight up and over, which, by the way, when it comes to real estate, typically squares sell for a lot more because you don't have to necessarily take any guesses when it comes to how does this space live. So obviously more density means that you can divide the price of the dirt by more doors, which should bring the values down. And also it means that instead of you being able to only do an 1,100 square foot ADU, accessory dwelling unit, now you can do 2 units that are, let's say, 2,000 square feet each. And they allowed more floor to area ratio, or FAR. Shout out to Gilad, by the way. Gilad in the house. Thanks for jumping in here, man. They allowed more floor to area ratio, right? So previously, if you had 2 units on one lot, you can go up to 0.45 or 45% floor to area ratio. That means if you had a 10,000 square foot lot, you could build 4,500 square feet. And the problem with that was then in the olden days, that meant that you could only allot 1,100 square foot to the back house. And then that remaining amount, let's call it 3,400 square feet for the front house. Well, dude, that you in that neighborhood, you might not want to build a 3,400 square foot home because a 3,400 square foot home might be overbuilding the neighborhood at that point. And so then that square footage that in theory could have been used to build another 1,100 square foot home, and now you're bringing 3 units to that neighborhood instead of 2. And now you're being able to bring 2 lesser priced units to the neighborhood. The one thing in my mind where the city whiffed is that they kept the impervious cover at 40%, right? So that's 40%. So if you have a 10,000 square foot lot, you can only have 40% of that lot covered by cement. So if you have 3 units, and let's say each unit is, I don't know, let's call it 2,000 square feet, and each one is 2 stories. That means that 1,000 square foot of that down is cement. Well, then you have your garage, which typically, or a carport in this case. So then you have another 200 square foot of carport. That doesn't include driveways, sidewalks, other things that are impervious, right? That is the thing I think that a lot of people are hitting a cap on, because when you go from 1 unit, you can do 4,500 or floor to air ratio of 0.45. With homes, you can do 2 units at 0.55 and 3 units at 0.65. So now you have the ability to do a lot more interior square footage. But what the city's trying to do is get people to park more on the street. So that way there, like I said, the parking requirement goes down. You don't get the bonuses for doing a 1 car garage like you did in the past. Everything is a carport for the most part. And so that's the difference there. I think that's where it whiffed. However, I think it's definitely a step in the right direction because it's allowing more density, and more density typically means more affordability at the end of the day. Let's see, what else do we have going on here? Oh man. A additional article here. We have a 237 acre ranch in Dripping Springs. Just hit the market for 6.5. Man, that feels like a pretty good price. Obviously, a lot of that would depend on kind of what you can do development wise and how flat it is. But man, at the end of the day, Dripping Springs, specifically this area, has just they just got the approval to double their sewage capacity, right? They were actually capped and they were bumping up to the point where they wouldn't allow more people to build because they couldn't add more sewage capacity. So now that they've doubled that, they've that greenlit the high school, the middle school, the new elementary school. And so then you're going to see a lot of new development coming out in that area. And again, more development typically means more affordability. If you can't build more, then you create scarcity in the market, and scarcity in the market typically increases prices, right? If you think about economics 101 and supply and demand, if you have 10 houses on the market and 20 buyers, you're going to have prices go up. If you have 10 houses on the market and 5 buyers, typically you're going to see prices go down. And that's the kind of that's the truth at that point. And so the ability to add more, I think, is really important. And so I'm excited to see kind of what happens with that piece of land. So I think that'll be something that'll be definitely needed in that area. Let's see kind of what else is going on, guys. Again, this is Paul Smith with 12 Rivers Realty, signing on for the 12 at 12. If you guys have any questions about anything, please feel free to ask. As we're just kind of talking real estate and just kind of bullshitting in general. Wanted to get your thoughts too. What did everybody think about ACL this year? Man, I think personally, I think some days felt more crowded than others. I think Sunday definitely was the day for the best music, in my opinion. I think John Summit killed it. I think from what Denise told me, the Killers killed it. And so it was I think overall it was a dope experience. I don't know if those that know her, she was absolutely killed it as well. Trying to think what else today. Market stats are about to come out. It's going to be interesting to see what they look like. My prediction is that there's going to be a bump in activity because of, if we look back 30 days ago, inventory was significantly less. Or not inventory was less, I'm sorry. If you look back 30 days ago, interest rates were less, which meant that there was a bump in buyer activity, which those would now be closing. So I think that's going to be a positive, at least for the market stats going. It's going to be interesting to see what happens with unemployment. I think that's something that we're going to have to watch because I don't see unemployment getting better. I don't see people just hiring a bunch of new people between now and the end of the year. It's going to be interesting to see what happens with unemployment and the federal layoffs as well, to see if those people get rehired or anything like that. Selma just asked about school closings and what do I think is going to happen. If I live in Austin right now and my children are going to AISD, I would be very, very cognizant of what's happening right now at AISD. Unfortunately, I think this could be something that pushes more people into private school. Obviously, the state of Texas is trying to incentivize people for that. And that's a bad thing for public school, I think, because really a lot of the state and federal funding for this is really tied to public school in the attendance. And so if people start attending private school more than public school, I think that's going to create the public school system is going to be even worse. And then all of a sudden, you're really going to have a wider gap of the haves and have-nots. And really, what it comes down to a lot of times is resources and education. And so I would definitely look at, if I was looking to buy in Austin, I would look at what schools are being affected by this. And I would really take that in consideration. If I'm a seller right now and my neighborhood is going to be affected by this, I would probably move up my sell because I would want to try to get out of that prior to that experience. Guys, again, this is Paul Smith talking about the 12 at 12. I do want to talk about one thing. I don't know, and this is going to be probably a fairly unpopular opinion, but I'm going to talk about it anyways. I don't know that those that know, but the city of Austin is relocating the Arch, basically, and building a new homeless shelter over off of Altworth and real close to 35. That is going to affect the real estate in East Travis Heights and Travis Heights. And that is something that I would definitely take a look at, see where your home proximity is to that, because that is something that could and most likely will negatively affect your real estate in those areas. I would definitely look at it and see how close you are. And because the thing right now is that the general public doesn't know. I want to know things before the general public does. I try to know things before the news does, because that's a place where you can really make money. But if things are happening, you need to understand what that's going to do to your values in your real estate. This could happen in any city that you're in, by the way. So if there's something where all of a sudden, things like in Southeast Austin with Endeavor buying the dog's head or Tesla coming in, all those things are positive things that we're talking about real estate that are going to raise the price and raise the values of real estate long term. There are things that can happen that can also be detrimental. Things, for example, like school closures or moving a homeless shelter next to your house. Those things are things that I do think would hurt your value. And as somebody that looks at real estate as an investment first, I would definitely strongly consider having a conversation with your real estate agent or somebody to be like, how is this going to affect me long term? Because I do think that that's something that would be negative. So those that live in Travis Heights, I've already been hit up by two friends that live there that are like, look, we want to move. And by the way, Travis Heights Elementary School is a great school, but it's one of those things where it might make sense to go ahead and trade out of that just because you don't know necessarily what's going to happen. But I would agree that it's probably not going to be a positive thing. Guys, this is Paul Smith again with the 12 at 12. As always, this has been fun. Appreciate everybody from tuning in. If you guys have any questions or anything that you'd like to ask me throughout the year, going to be 10x the size of current location. Oh, wow. Okay. So the new shelter is going to be 10x the size of the current location. So it's going to be able to service more people, which, by the way, is great. I think it's very important that we take care of our homeless population and also a lot of things that happen within mental health and everything else. I think all these things are very important, but it also doesn't mean that it can't hurt your real estate, right? So those two things can be true, and that's totally okay that both of those are true, but we have to acknowledge those. And you don't want to be stuck in a situation where either one, you're buying a home in that area, you're paying today's prices, and then 3 years from now, when this happens, all of a sudden your prices are less. That would be something that would concern me long term. Guys, thanks again for tuning in. This is Paul Smith signing out. If y'all need anything throughout the year, day, week, please feel free to hit me up. Appreciate y'all. Be good.